Welcome to Transformative Principal, where you learn how to be a leader and not just a manager of a to-do list. I am your host, Jethro Jones. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Your to-do list is a hungry monster that is never satisfied. For the last year and a half, I've helped principals get awards, get promoted, and find the time to do the work that really matters. I recently opened a new mastermind slot. Schedule a call with me and let's overcome the stressed and isolated principal position together. Go to the show notes for this episode at transformativeprincipal.org and click Schedule a Call with Jethro. Welcome to Transformative Principal. I am excited to have this conversation today with Byron Darnall. Byron, welcome to Transformative Principal, and thank you for being part of the conversation.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
So I'm excited to have you on the podcast. And can you start by telling us a little bit about where you're at, your school, and the age range and things that you're paying attention to right now in your school?
Sure, absolutely. For the past 5 years, I have had the honor of being principal/head learner for Potter Gray Elementary School, which lies in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And my school serves students K through 5, and we have approximately 420 to 450 students in the entire student body.
Okay, cool. And so for 5 years, you've been there. And what I find is that the first 3 years, everybody's just getting to know each other. The fourth year and fifth year, you're able to start implementing some of the things that you are passionate about. You're hiring the kind of people that align with your vision. Can you talk a little bit about your journey in going from starting out there to where you're at now and working with the staff and the students and the families and all that kind of stuff?
Sure, absolutely. Well, you're so right. And one thing that a lot of our, reform, if you will, conversations have centered around involves change that's immediate. And certainly there is always an immediate need for something to improve within a school. But long-term sustainable change is very slow. I just like to call it the slow churn. So it is very gratifying to be here in this fifth year because you start to feel more at home. I was very fortunate to come into a school that, at least according to our standardized assessments, is a high-performing school. I certainly don't like that to be the only judge of what is happening for our students here. But we are fortunate to have students that come to school and they expect to learn and they're hungry to learn. And sometimes it's a little intimidating to come into a school that's had a lot of success because the expectations should be and are high, but you also sort of internalize that and feel, what is it that I can do to improve upon something that already has a very successful history. And naturally, just like a lot of other things, it comes down to examining the student experience and what are we providing for our students that, yes, builds that academic foundation and those foundational skills, but ultimately, whose school is it? Are we as the adults still sort of the dominant voice in the school, or are we critical in examining the amount of leadership opportunities and learning opportunities that we're giving over to the students? There's certainly nothing easy about that. And in most cases, as educators, we tend to operate from the center and disperse, but working on a mindset of empowerment and student agency, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of reflectiveness on the people in the building. So while I am very grateful and thankful to a successful, rich academic history, I also feel that that work is so complicated, but so necessary as we move into now 2019, soon to be 2020, and the types of opportunities we're preparing our students for when they leave fifth grade.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you and I talked about discussing on here is the idea of busyness and how that works and detritus. So let's talk a little bit about busyness first. What is your perspective on that, and help us understand what you mean by that?
Well, I certainly have heard the statement, and I can't attribute it to anyone specific, but business is a disease of our time. And I just feel the pace of life And I guess the way most people are engaged, it just always comes down to the answer of how are you doing? The answer is by default, we're busy. And certainly as educators, we are extremely busy, but I guess it bothers me because my big question has been, what is it that's causing me to be busy? And as I examine priorities and time and the efforts that I'm putting toward a day or a week or a month, are they contributing to the vision and mission that I have in terms of my professional and my personal life for that matter? And I guess I just run into a lot of people that they use that by default. I would love to, but I'm so busy. Well, that would be a great idea, but you know how busy we are. And in schools, that's the enemy we've created because we just love to layer things on top of one another. We're really good at coming up with new initiatives, new ideas, new programs, but we're really poor at examining what we need to take away to create space for something to actually live, breathe, and develop. And so I guess what I love about what you're doing, Jethro, is just, you're trying to create these connected communities of professionals through podcasts, through your mastermind and resources so that, those that are hungry for that personal development have an outlet to go to and to share, and to be a learner and to model what we want to see within our schools. But I guess just by and large, I just see a lot of people that like to default to the answer. Well, that would be a great idea to get together, have a meaningful conversation, even maybe do a book study or examine an issue that is sort of stumping me in my school. Yet I really don't have time for that. So good idea, but it's just not for me. And so, you're creating these windows along with other individuals that see the importance of breaking that isolation, because let's face it, what we do is way too difficult to do as a lone individual. So the busyness disease, I guess, is just something that I just always have to ask myself, is it too busy am I too busy to get better?
Yeah.
Am I too busy to invest in a conversation that is going to make me think about what it is that I'm doing, and more importantly, why I'm doing it? And then someone to ask great questions that's going to lead me to, a better iteration in the future to come. And I guess for me, there is no more important work. It's just kind of like I was thinking yesterday that most of administrators, it's just a hair on fire kind of day. And I'll admit it, that tends to be more days than not. But I guess I'm critical of, if that is the case, then there's learning that I need to do to calm that. And I need to find out why this fire is going all the time. And then I need to be critical about, am I causing busyness where busyness does not need to exist? And then I need to look at my systems and my workflow to decide the waste, if you will, in order to get to a point to where I feel like I've been critical of the time and how I allot it. And so, for example, we all need time to think. But I bet if you ask a lot of administrators, would you take an hour a week, 30 minutes out of your day to just find a spot and just do some thinking?
Yeah.
I would venture to say that most people would say, well, I don't have time for that. And, there's just no way. But at the same time, isn't that pretty important to give yourself that permission to be able to sort of pause and just, have that internal dialogue, or, have a dialogue with a mentor that can just, help you get centered and offer you another viable point of view on these, super important issues that we face every day.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of very slowly reading a book called The Road Less Stupid. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but I'll find it in just a second and get back to you. But one of the things that he recommends is taking time to think on a regular basis and slowing down enough just to think. And that is such a powerful thing to do. And it's so easy for us to be, as principals, we run from one emergency to the next, one fire to the next, always trying to put them out. And that's not a healthy, appropriate, smart strategic, effective way to deal with anything. And yet that is what our lives are filled with. And so what advice do you have for someone who is trying to break that cycle of living in your email or constantly going from one thing to another? And what's your advice to help them know how to slow down?
Well, here's a promo for you. Seek out individuals like yourself that are initiating conversations.
All right, great idea. I like that. Everybody, good
there
idea.
You go.
Yeah.
There you go. Just give your money now. But I will say, for example, Justin Bader, he has invested a lot of time in looking into this, and honestly, it's just come from my own want to recognize that there's got to be a better way. Every day shouldn't just lead to absolute exhaustion. In that every day, yes, there may very well be an emergency, but what truly constitutes an emergency? And I just, in conversations with colleagues, I just find a lot of time we sort of create that emergency. Not saying that something isn't important, but is it really just mission critical that this has to be addressed right now? And just like we talk with teachers, educators in the classroom about giving students room to breathe, to learn, to talk, because just by nature, a lot of times we want to rescue students. We want them to feel successful, so we sort of nudge them along or we rescue them. I think administrators do that too. I think we want to be seen as, this is what I do. I come in, I take care of this, I leave. And, the reality is that while we certainly do face very real needs in a day, the likelihood that should be happening all the time is very slim. And
Yes.
So it's finding a critical voice that you can walk through what your days look like, how you schedule your days, how many interruptions do you have in a day? Like I have a lot of colleagues that will say, well, I can't do a schedule because there's no way for me to know. I don't know what's going to happen when I walk in that door. And that is a very true statement. But the reality is that should not be every day. And if that is the case, then what systems am I putting in place to help, eliminate some of that so that we can get to a better, more calmer day where I can be intentional with my time? And there's nothing easy about it, but you have to, it's just like asking our teachers to be self-reflective. That's the key for us too. Being self-reflective and then being open to finding someone we trust that's going to give us some honest feedback about whether or not we're allocating our time appropriately or whether or not we're just allowing ourselves to be pulled in directions that really we could probably eliminate if we're honest about it.
Yeah, I had this, as listeners of the podcast know, is something that I've been working on a lot over the past several years. And when I first started the podcast, I was working from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Without fail. That was normal. Occasionally I would work earlier and I would stay later. And I just was not happy in my hours being spent in that way. And so what I've done is I've tried to cut out a lot of the junk that I don't need and do my job, but in a more effective, efficient way. And I know principals who are listening to this who are going to absolutely resonate with what I'm about to say, which is that a good principal gets to work, gets to the school first, and is the last one to leave. And that is, I believe, a lie that we have been telling ourselves for a long time. And if you have to be at the school for things to happen, then you're absolutely doing it wrong. You've got to be able to set boundaries and put boundaries in place so that you can take time for yourself and not feel like you're being selfish by doing that, but feel like you are making a wise choice that will pay dividends later, both for you and for your school community. And so,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, to illustrate that, I had a teacher who I was at work late one day, and it was, about an hour and a half after the kids went home, and she saw me and she said, "Oh, you're here still? I never see you here this late." And while some principals, and certainly myself 5 years ago, would have taken that to be an insult, I took that as a compliment that I am doing good on putting those boundaries in place and not being so busy that I have to, be at work for 12 hours every single day, no matter what. And her saying that gave me that recognition that me having boundaries is working and people are seeing it. And I want to help teachers have those boundaries as well.
Yeah. And good for you. And it's hard for us to give ourselves permission. It just is. And I think that's just, from administrator to, you're a great teacher. It's just hard to give yourself permission that it's okay. If I leave this building, it's okay. If I'm not spending, 12 hours a day just steeped in work. And, we know that this profession is always going to demand more than just a daily job.
Exactly. Yeah.
It is a mission. It's a calling for a lot of people. But at the same time, it's also the reason why, we have high rates of burnout. It's also why when you talk to a lot of people, they're like, I wouldn't want to be an administrator. Why would I do that? And not that, I want to pull talented people away from the classroom, but there's a perception, that, I wouldn't want to go there because that would just be another level that I would have to commit to. That would be beyond what I'm already doing, which seems overwhelming, even from the classroom perspective. So that permission aspect and just sort of that guilt, I guess, that classroom school building guilt that, we all contend with at one time or another.
Yeah. And so the other thing to add to that story is that my school, in my opinion, is performing better as a whole now that I am taking a step back and allowing people to be their own leaders and things like that. And I'm not having to handhold everything. My school is performing better now than it did in the past. And so I think that is really important too, that we feel like, well, if I'm not there, then things are going to fall apart. And the reality for most people in most situations is if you take a step back and take your hands off, things will flourish without your micromanaging.
Yeah. We like to fancy, that, oh my gosh, heaven forbid I'd be out of the building.
Yeah.
But right, that's really what we want. And I am by far, the least intelligent person, in this building because I have, amazing people that I get to work alongside every day. And then I have amazing kids that I get to learn alongside with every day. And, their visions, their ideas for the school are probably way grander and better than mine will ever be. I'm just fortunate enough to be here for the ride as well. But it comes down, the idea of systems thinking is something that I wasn't really exposed to, certainly not as a classroom teacher. And then I really wasn't exposed to it during my administrative certification process either. And when I had the chance to go work at the Iowa Department of Education and then started my doctorate program at Seton Hall University, that's when I really encountered coming at things from a systems approach. And it just was such a learning experience for me in taking, the system is going to deliver what it's designed to deliver. And in a lot of cases, you have to examine, is this like an individual issue that's causing this, or is it just the system by design is allowing this to happen? And getting at the heart of how you're operating. And it's not that, I don't like the schools as business analogies because it's just, these are human variables and I don't really like putting those two together, but there certainly is a lot we can take away in terms of levels of efficiency. And so, for example, one of the things I dread the most, and I'm sure like many, many others, is email. Just email drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I eventually just got so frustrated that, wow, I'm not really here to be a person that answers email. That's not really what I signed up to do. So then, you start talking, meeting people. Well, how do you handle it? What do you do? One of the best things I ever did is to centralize my school-wide communication. So using a Blogger, I communicate through a blog. So anything that is of importance, anything that needs to be communicated school-wide, it will be on the blog. And, I limit and try my best to avoid sending out any type of all faculty email. And just by nature of taking a simple step, and centralizing a point of communication, working on reminding everyone and getting one into that groove has made a big impact just on the amount of time I spend receiving and responding to emails. And, it's just a simple move. And so from there, it's kind of our hub. It's our instructional hub. It's our informational hub, and everything has a drop-down menu. So anything that is of pertinence to, the business and working ends of our school can be located on that one landing page. And it took a lot of time to invest and get it going. But just that was a step that has made my life infinitely better in terms of the battle of email. And then the other thing is just using email on a very limited basis. Trying, if I cannot respond in, 2 to 3 sentences, it's not an email. It becomes a conversation. It becomes a phone call. It's an in-person, same going for text. And so just being really judicious about the modeling that I'm doing in terms of the email that I'm allowing myself to fall into as a mode of communication. And, it is amazing, though, if you start to be critical of it. Certainly I slip at times, but it has made a big overall impact on lessening that demand in my day.
Yeah, that's so important. And email is one of those things that, I use a thing called SaneBox to automatically pull all the unimportant emails out of my inbox so that I pretty much just see the emails from the people that I immediately work with. And that really helps as well. And whatever it is that you do, you've got to figure out a way to make your system work for you, not you work for the system. I mean, I'm sure we all go to principal meetings in our districts and we see, half the people or more who are, just answering email the whole entire time and, not engaging in the conversation that's there when we have that time to be together and share that. And that is just one of those things that, is a cultural thing that we feel like our job is to do email, and it really isn't. And our job is to work with teachers, work with kids, and do that. So I appreciate your advice and tips on that. The last question that I ask is, what is one thing that a principal can do this week to be a transformative principal like you?
Talk to your students. Spend time right beside them. Ask them questions about their day. Ask them questions about what they're learning. Ask them questions about why they're learning. Ask them about what they aspire to be as they get older. Ask them what they think this school can do to be better. So essentially, sidle up to your students and spend as much time in a week side by side with your students. Not that the adult learners are not important, but yeah, go to them. And that's what we're in it for. We are their ambassador, and it's really it should be a selfish act. It is such a rewarding opportunity to go into a classroom, sit side by side with students that you're in your school, get involved in a lesson that they're doing, help co-teach a lesson that they're involved in, and just spend as much time as you can asking them questions, having those conversations, and doing that in as much of your day as you possibly can allow.
Yeah, that's great advice. How can people connect with you and learn more from you, Byron?
Absolutely. Well, Twitter is a big one. So it's at Byron504. It's easy to contact me. Or byron.darnall@gmail.com. And it's DARNALL, phonetically challenging there. So those are two very easy ways to get a hold of me.
Excellent. Thank you again so much for being part of Transformative Principal. And you can find his contact information in the show notes at transformativeprincipal.org. Byron, thanks again for your time.
Jethro, I really appreciate it, sir.